This is it's like a tractor engine, but it has a load carrying platform behind. And Bowden's, you will all know from having used them, but Bowden's were the main manufacturers in this country of steam wagons. This one was actually used with a tank very much the same as it's got in it now, with the parts where it's marked, about 1928, and it was new as a cast frame wagon. Owned by the Davy family from down in the forest of New Forest, very much Bowden fans through and through. They're also storing a Bowden traction engine at the moment. This wagon I've seen many times on the road. It's very smooth, very quiet, and it's also got pneumatic tires, which is not all steam wagons have. Yeah, they call it the D-type wagon, and it's just a D-type tractor. We'll see some of those later. Feature various innovations in navigation, including hybrid steering and roller bearings in all countries. I think it's still on those.
Because it was big, sweeping, corn-growing country with large acreages, they favoured the 8-horse engine because it could drive the heaviest of thrashing trucks, which was, I think, 54 inches. I think certainly the Ransom, the biggest Ransom was 54, and I think the biggest Marshall was 54 inches as well.
Yes.
And we talk about agricultural engines. They were principally developed through the middle of the 19th century onwards into the early 20th century for the purpose of hauling and driving thrashing machines. Because this was the one aspect of farm mechanisation that was most crucial to improving agricultural productivity. And as the Industrial Revolution urbanised much of this country, with large numbers of people settling in the big emerging cities to work in the various factories around the country. So the need for the agricultural community to produce much more food to feed the Earth's population became ever more pressing. Mechanisation was a key to that.
This is a Clayton and Shuttleworth made in Lincoln. Clayton and Shuttleworth were well-known engineers and were making portable engines which weren't self-propelled. in very early Victorian times, and as Alan said, they were for powering thrashing machines, because it was the first stage of mechanisation of agriculture, of separating the seed, or the ears from the chaff, from the straw, to make bread or feed or whatever, and they would stack them up in the farmyards, and then these engines would come round and do the thrashing in winter time, which is why you said for hauling as well as driving, and you went from farm to farm, because not every farmer could afford an engine.
Yes, thrashing was very much a contracted trade. Now we've got the first furrow of the afternoon, and this is what we call a compound engine, which means it's got two cylinders and it uses the steam twice. But this is a particular arrangement of compound that only Burrell's made, called the single crank compound, easily identified by the fact that it has two cylinder covers on the cylinder block, but they are arranged in a diagonal line. And the small one is what we call the high pressure piston, and that takes the steam directly from the boiler, and then when the steam is exhausted from that cylinder, it is transferred by a transfer port to the low pressure larger cylinder and expands further to create more power from the steam, and there is therefore less wastage up the chimney. And the theory was that this made the engine more economical for a given power output.
Next is a Fowler. Now this is also a compound engine, but the cylinders are side by side, so it has two piston rods working off the crankshaft. You can see them going backwards and forwards. There is also a smaller one and a larger one, which is a high pressure and a low pressure. This engine was new to Newmarket. We all know is famous for its racing history, and I think this was used for baling up all of the hay for the stables. It worked out there for many years before it became very much part of this area, and it carries the name Pride of the Wine.
It's been in preservation in this part of the country for about 50 years, I think.
Next we have a road locomotive. Now we've had a road locomotive before, that one had a crane on it. This one is just a plain road locomotive, and it's the first engine we've seen from Aveling and Porter. Aveling and Porter made in Kent, and has the Kent emblem on the front, which is a rampant horse. They were made at Rochester. They seem to make an engine more powerful for the same size than other manufacturers. This engine, if it was a Burrell, you would probably say it was an 8. But if it was an 8, you know,
I remember this engine well in previous ownership 30 odd years ago, and I had the opportunity of driving on a couple of occasions, and I must say that although it's a pretty effective engine in terms of steam and power, it is a powerful engine, compared to a Burrell road locomotive, it's not so aerodynamically laid back.
No, I don't think they thought of the driver. It's in the middle, it's first World War WD, War Department, and it now carries a Cornish registration. After it did military service, it worked for much of its life in Cornwall.
Whatever you think of it, it's certainly an impressive machine. First steamroller of the afternoon follows on. This one is a Fowler. Steamrollers were offered for sale by most of the engine manufacturers in the country. We've just been talking about the Aveling and Porter road rotor that went round. Well, the Aveling and Porter concern at Rochester in Kent made the vast majority of steamrollers. It's reckoned that they produced more rollers than all the other manufacturers put together. But the other manufacturers who were successful in the roller sphere were included Fowlers of Leeds. Probably they were number 2 Aveling in their output of rollers.
And this particular engine, it's very similar. You'll notice that some of the engines that come around later on as the steam cracker brake, where they picked a common sized engine and they thought, well, are we going to use it as a roller or a tractor? And this is a T3 roller. Now we will see T3 tractors later, and the actual flywheel and cylinders are the same, but it just has different differentials and a different set of wheels.
Our second Burrell this afternoon is another single crank compound. This one's a 6 horse. And again, you will see, because it's an agricultural engine with no motion covers and spoke flywheel, you can clearly see how the motion is arranged to operate both cylinders simultaneously through one set of rods, one con rod, transmitting the power to the crankshaft.
I think it was said that engines that didn't have a spoke flywheel were ones that were intended to go on the road, and they thought it might frighten the horses that were about in tracks and carriages if the spokes were to be going round at rapid speed.
I think that was a theory from way back into Victorian times. Well, we must remember, of course, Mark, that the traction engine was very much frowned upon by the authorities, who were, and the authorities essentially were the landowners and the gentry, who used horses intensively and rode about the place, didn't like these newfangled contraptions that started to come onto their road, and looked to make as much difficulty for traction engine operators as possible.
We're blessed now with another Foden, this one a traction engine, and it's very rare that it's a single cylinder. I think only 4 in the country, and most of them have been imported from Australia in preservation rights. The Foden design is slightly different to others, where they have much bigger wheels with many more spokes. I think they thought that was a safer way to go, but also they were, we might see them later on, they were very early in the compound system and also in suspension, where they had great big springs like you would see on a truck actually right in front of the driver.
Fodens, in fact, they effectively invented the concept of compounding on a traction engine arrangement. They were the first company to do it. Now then, we were talking about that steamroller a few moments ago, Mark, the T3, little Fowler, and here is a tractor version built on the same boiler with the same size of cylinder block and motion. But the essential difference between the roller version and the tractor version is that the tractor version has a more advanced valving arrangement that allows both cylinders to work effectively on the high pressure steam boiler rather than move the steam from the high pressure side to the low pressure side of the cylinder. And you'll notice, ladies and gentlemen, that compared to the T3 roller, which had one exhaust pipe coming out of the front of the cylinder block into the base tube, this one has 2, and that signifies the double high arrangement that the tractor has.
Next is another roller, either a 10 or a 12 tonner, and it carries belly tanks like we see on road locomotives, but these tanks are actually for putting tar in. And you can see on top of the tar, on the flywheel, the tar tank on the flywheel tank, is a pump which is driven mechanically by a chain from the crankshaft by the flywheel, and this pumps the tar, which is heated from the boiler, to the back of the engine where it would be a spray bar, and it would go straight onto the road, the chips to go on it, and it would be rolled in.
Yes, you'd have men with shovels throwing the chips onto the sprayed tar surface, immediately behind it, and then something like a T3, which we see, or this Evening perhaps, this 8-ton Evening, would come along behind and roll the whole mixture into the surface to firm it up. Another Clayton Shuttleworth. Now we had one earlier that was a compound. This is a single cylinder. It's called Clyde. It's an early design where the governor arrangement, that's just in front of the flywheel, they spin round, and when they're drifted from a belt to the flywheel, when it's on a belt, then it slows the engine down or speeds it up to demand whatever it's going to say. So that's an early type of governor. The later ones had a governor on top of the cylinder which shut down the steam supply. And Clayton and Shuttleworth were one of the 4 Lincoln manufacturers, and here is an engine from another Lincolnshire manufacturer, which is a Marshall of Gainsborough. This is a compound, and almost all the manufacturers offer both single cylinder and compound cylinder engines in various different but some manufacturers, their purchases favoured one or the other, and the majority of Marshalls produced would have been single cylinder engines for agricultural work, whereas, for instance, on Burrells, the majority of Burrells were compound for road.
Another Clayton, when you go to shows, you don't see many Claytons, and here we have 3 in a very short time, all of different types. This is a compound that means it's a 2-cylinder, but it's actually a road roller. I don't think there are many Clayton road rollers left. We're very lucky to see this one today. I haven't seen one for ages today. And the same design as all the other engines. This one has motion bars on it, so you can't see the sparks as they backwards and forwards. And being a two-cylinder, it would have been quite fast and powerful roller.
And that's followed by another road locomotive from another manufacturer. This is a McLaren. JLX McLaren Leeds were pretty well adjacent to the Fowler works, and they too produce large, powerful road engines. And this is an example that was exported and would have almost certainly been operated with fuel on something akin to home or straw. And if you look at the engine, it's got a large bunker box extending over to the rear of the tender at the back of the engine, and this is so that it would have the capacity of a low-grade bulky fuel to be able to run for a reasonable length of time without having to be refilled.
And it has a lovely set of spare lead rollers, you can see underneath that fuel bunker. Normally you see them with big rollers going up and down, and you've just got two rollers together with a winch, because most of the engines, not exceptionally rollers, but most of the other engines have a winch on inside the wheel of the flywheel side, and if you want to either extract yourself or your trailer or your crane machine from a wet condition, that was what they did, they used the winch. If you look at the next engine, a Fowler, you can plainly see the set of winch rollers at the back, and that's where the cable came out. It made them very useful for pulling trees out of woods.
And the winch was also essential for, in difficult conditions, for manoeuvring thrashing boxes, balers and elevators into position to thrash ricks. And no traction engine really was ever made without winches, because they were such an integral part of the machine. They were the purpose of the machine that was being built.
The next engine, Fowler Lady Betty, it's half a showman's engine at the moment. It will, I'm sure, soon be a full showman's engine, but you can see that they are very similar to a normal road locomotive that you see going around, except they have a dynamo out in the front and a full-length canopy to cover the whole of the road. This one is under restoration. You can see that the boiler barrel itself underneath is going to do it brand new. And I think it's been a good while since it's been back on the road. It's nice to see it out and about again.
And that's followed by our third Fowler Agricultural of the afternoon so far. This is a single cylinder one. And
I think it was from this area, wasn't it? From Hereford.
Well, it's got a Herefordshire registration, so it certainly is.
I'm just trying to place it. I'm not sure I did. Well, for many years it was with Ted Freeman from near Banbury, a chap that we both know. And he did a lovely job of restoring it into the condition that you see it now. It's been through a few other owners. It's nice to see it's looking in just as good a condition now as it was 40 years ago.
Yes, you've refreshed my memory, thank you. Another Fowler, this time a road locomotive. We can talk about road locomotives. The particular features of road locomotives include 3-speed in the gearing rather than 2, so they've got a faster top gear road speed, and also what we call belly tanks, which are the large tanks fitted slung under the boiler between the two axles in front of the rear wheels, and this arrangement gave them an extra water capacity for longer distances travelling on the road between water stops.
And of course, at that time, even though they had 3 speeds, there was still a speed limit. There were many tales of drivers being fined for exceeding the speed limit with a traction engine.
And now we have another road locomotive, this time a Burrell, a smaller one. This is a 5 horsepower one. And this is an interesting engine in that it was the penultimate Burrell ever made. And the Burrell works closed in 1928, and the agricultural and general engineering groups that owned Burrells and a number of other manufacturers were still receiving orders, so they sent the remaining Burrell parts down to one of their other companies, Garrett's of Leiston on the Suffolk coast, which is where the Sizewell power station complex is now. And this was one of the engines that was completed at Garrett's of Leiston, and One of the features of it is it has machine cut gears. One of the first engines to have machine cut gears, which makes it very, very quiet. And I know Dorothy Prouddoor used to say that when on first Canton owned this engine, and he'd arrive at the garage, and they wouldn't hear it pull up because it was so quiet. But it had machine cut gears. Next to it, we have 3-ton Foster. It's actually a brand new engine, but it's made exactly to the drawings of an old one. And the 3-ton tractor, like Alan said about the 5-ton tractor, came about just after the turn of the 20th century, about 1901, 1902, when they changed the law, and a tractor engine of 3 tons could be operated by one man, thereby saving time, money and expense. And quite a few manufacturers actually made a 3-ton tractor. Not many of the originals survive, so I don't think there is an original Foster one, so this one has been made exactly the same drawing. And that's followed by another Foster, this time an agricultural engine, a single-cylinder thrashing engine. Fosters were one of the 4 Lincoln manufacturers, and they were well known for 3 classes of engines. Their thrashing engines like this, their road locomotives, especially their showman's engines, and their tractors.
Next is another Fowler, a single cylinder this time. This would be similar to the mechanics of a normal, an agricultural engine, only with rolls on it and a headstock at the front. Some of them are actually made what we call convertible, where you could operate them as a traction engine or a roller.
We've got a compound barrel 6-horse agricultural engine now. Fine examples of an engine front barrels, double crank compound. There's 3-shaft arrangement, by which we mean that you can tell the difference. This engine has only 3 shafts, the crankshaft, the intermediate shaft, and the back axle. And so a 3-shaft engine, when moving forward, the flywheel is going forward as well. Whereas a 4-shaft engine, like the steamroller following from a reporter, the engine is moving forward and the flywheel is contra-rotating against it.
And next we have an Aisling and Porter, which probably has been seen by more people than any other engine. It's featured many, many times on Fred Dimler's television programmes, both when he was rebuilding it and when he was taking it to shows. And his sons, one driving it and one walking along the side. Nice to see you, lads. And great to see that the name's still going. And I must say, Fred did more for this movement in recent times than anyone else, because he had such enthusiasm to show what Victorian engineering was like, that it made it enjoyable to watch and learn about it. And you can never take anything away from someone who's got enthusiasm.
With another Fowler road loco, we did have a plethora of them here this weekend. And this is a well-known engine that was worked in Scotland. And you'll see there's a large bracket on the front of the smoke box. And this is for the crane jib. We've seen one crane engine, the Masters Road Services P6 Fowler that's standing in the line. But this one also is crane equipped and does appear at shows from time to time with a jib up.
Next we have an engine from Wantage, which was Berkshire but now Oxfordshire. This is Gibbons and Robinson. You could have Robinson and Alden and Wantage Engineering Company. All in the same factory but much the same design. A very good engine. They didn't make that many, but there's only I think 3 survivors, and it's nice to see one of them here today.
And an engine that is very familiar in this part of the world. Really one of the most well-known Fowler road locomotives. This was the Fowler road locomotive new to Robert Williams, the famous heavy hauliers of Newport in South Wales. Were legendary around here. Even in the post-war diesel era, they were regularly seen on the A38 moving fast loads through Tewkesbury on up to Worcester and right down past the Cathedral and Worcester and down what is now the High Street, the pedestrianised High Street, which was the A38, the main route north. And with winds also, they were in timber as well as heavy haulage. And I think they used this engine as well as a garage just for getting timber around. And this engine was owned by the Wind family. It changed for a long time,
up until the 1980s. Following that is another boat in a different shape and size. This is a Bowden road locomotive called Sandy McNabb. I think most are quite popular in Scotland because there are 2 or 3 providers that all started their life up in Scotland. And this one, as far as I'm aware, is the only genuine road locomotive Bowden that survived.
Yeah, they were not renowned for their road locomotives. Road locomotive customers buyers went to well known for that beer, such as Fowlers, McLarens or Burrells. But here is a Bowden example, and it is a good upstanding engine. I've always liked the Bowden. Next, a Ransom's in from Jeffries from Ipswich. Ransom's very famous for making mowers, ploughs, everything agricultural, but they also make a huge amount of portable engines which go around the world, and a lot of agricultural tractor engines, like you see this one here. They used to have the benefit, they could supply the farmer with the engine, the thrashing drum and the elevator, so he would buy the whole set from one supplier. And then we have an Aveling tandem roller, a very unusual arrangement. So I think Aveling and Marshalls were probably the only 2 manufacturers that made tandem rollers. They weren't particularly successful. They had a high centre of gravity and tended to roll about a bit. And the idea was to even out the weight of the rolling between front and back rolls and to provide an instant reverse so that you didn't need ripples in the tarmac.
Next is a Burrells, we call it a 7-horsepower road locomotive. It's a fine restoration. It's like the same as the other Burrells, we've got a compact